When do you think that picture of Nicholas was taken?
Guess you'll have to ask him. Oh, boom, there he is. All right.
It was like
All right.
only yesterday.
Oh, okay.
All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Laura, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Targ,
Present.
Commissioner Haskell. I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you. Commissioner Haskell.
Are you muted? No.
We'll keep going. I'm sure she'll get it fixed. Commissioner
Yeah, we
Haskell
know
is
she's
present.
here.
Yeah, Commissioner Goulden,
Present?
Vice Chair Koff-Still,
I'm here.
Chair Taylor.
Present. Okay, great. So welcome, everyone. We currently have 4 attendees tonight. So are there any public comments that are not on the agenda for this evening? Now is the time to address the commission. If you would raise your hand, if you want to address the commission on something that's not on tonight's agenda. Okay, so seeing none, let's move on to the first agenda item. So Laura, is there a staff report?
Yeah, there's a staff report from Jake.
Hey, go ahead, please.
I'm mute.
Thank you. And thank you, Chair. I will share my screen. Excellent. Okay. The item before you tonight is a request for consideration for an architectural review and site development permit for a new horse barn, corral, and new landscaping at 270 Mapache Drive. This 108,900 square foot lot is zoned residential estate and is an interior lot along Mapache Drive. The property is surrounded on all sides by single family residential located in the same zoning district. The lot is gradually sloped uphill at the front and is moderately sloped downhill at the rear of the property. There is an existing single-story main residence and storage shed attached by an existing carport. These structures are proposed to remain. The applicant is proposing to construct a 128 square foot horse barn and a 1,180 square foot fence enclosed horse corral area that is partially covered by an overhang roof structure and attached to the new barn. The proposed floor area increase is well within what is permitted for the site, and the applicant also proposes to replace and expand the front and rear patio areas with a concrete slab pavement. The rear patio is to include concrete seat walls and a path that leads out to a new fire pit area. The project also proposes an 11-foot wide seasonal dirt road with 13-foot wide trailer turn around area that extends off the existing driveway to the rear of the property for access to the proposed horse barn and corral area. New landscaping made entirely up of native plants is proposed primarily at the rear of the house near the new patio space and along the rear property line. Some minimal planting is proposed at the front of the main residence, and no significant trees are proposed for removal. A total of 1,685 cubic yards of soil cut and fill is associated with the project in order to construct the proposed site improvements. We'll start first with the proposed barn, the elevations for the proposed barn and corral area. On your screen, you'll see the design of the small building structure and attached corral fencing. The proposed materials are the proposed materials and colors would be consistent with the town's design guidelines and include exterior color finish of Grange Hall shown on the left for the fascia and the color chocolate milk for the trim shown on the right. The roof is proposed to be a gable wood frame roof with shingles in the color autumn blend. The ASCC has reviewed the project and had recommended that the applicant consider revising proposed materials to be more fire resistant, but were otherwise expressed satisfaction with the proposed design. Here again is the site plan and the existing site plan and proposed site plan. Please note the new patio areas located at the front and rear of the main residence, including path leading out to the proposed fire pit area, and the new 11-foot wide seasonal dirt road and trailer turnaround area to access the rear of the property. The project proposes 6,311 square feet of new landscaping. Plantings are proposed in natural groupings throughout the site and include minimal planting at the front of the main residence, and planting around the rear of the residence, and planting for additional screening near the rear property line and rear left property line. Landscaping is proposed to be vegetated entirely with native plants, and the project proposes to utilize 67% of the maximum allowed water allowance. Here's a breakdown of the grading. The project proposes 1,685 cubic yards of soil movement, subject to site development permit at the to be approved by the Planning Commission. The grading is proposed for the new horse barn corral and seasonal dirt road driveway. The plans propose to move soil from the middle section of the property to fill in at the rear of the property to allow for a level surface to construct the horse barn and corral area. The proposed horse barn and corral area is approximately 174 feet from the rear of the existing house. So the seasonal dirt road would connect the existing house and driveway to the new horse barn and corral area. Portola Valley Municipal Code 18.56.010 defines impervious surface, and the town's website includes the guiding interpretation of impervious surfaces to be surfaces that will not allow or will greatly reduce the penetration of water into the ground. And these surfaces include concrete, asphalt, bricks, paving stones, swimming pools, turf stone, plastic sheeting, compacted gravel and rock areas, any gravel or decomposed granite areas, and paths wider than 4 feet, corrals, and similar surfaces. Additionally, in the if the property has an exceptionally long driveway, the portion of the driveway which is further than 100 feet from the residence shall be exempt. The applicant proposes an 11-foot wide seasonal dirt road with a trailer turnaround that extends from the existing driveway to the newly proposed horse barn and corral structure. Staff had requested that the ASCC determination as to whether the seasonal dirt road should be included in the impervious surface calculation. The ASCC was supportive of the seasonal dirt road and turnaround as proposed and provided guidance on how to show it on the plans. There is consensus that the applicant should show the tire tracks and turnaround because those areas may become compacted and therefore meet the definition of the impervious surface. And the plans have since been revised and now include tire tracks and turnaround areas to be included as impervious surface. Staff has sent a notice to all property owners within 300 feet of the project site in advance of the Planning Commission meeting, and no additional public comments were received by staff since publication of the report. Prior to today's meeting, the applicant has shared emails of support and verbal support received from neighbors during their outreach for the proposed project. That ends staff presentation. Both the town staff and applicant team are available for any questions by the Planning Commission. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jake. Commissioners, are there questions for staff report? Go ahead,
Yeah,
Judith.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, great. Just some mundane ones. Why is it called a seasonal driveway?
The applicant has indicated that they plan to use it seasonally, and they can opine on that further and provide a more concise answer for you.
Carter, could you help us out with the language used there?
Sure, I was waiting for the chair.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Carter.
It's really because we want the aesthetic of a dirt road. You know, if it's wet and snotty, they're not going to use it. You know, if they feel comfortable driving on it, then they will. So, I mean, this January it'd be just fine. Last year's January it wouldn't have been fine. So, you know, it is not intended, you know, to be improved other than making the space for it. You know, we anticipate, you know, that there'll be tire tracks, you know, because, you know, if you drive on it enough, you know, the grass and stuff will not grow. But, you know, on a, you know, in a rural setting, you know, these roads, you know, gradually the grass, you know, if they don't drive on it, then the grass will grow back over the road. So it's very much in keeping with the rural aesthetic.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought. The question for the staff is just, is that an important distinguishing factor for any reasons before us? To me, I'm not sure I care if it's seasonal or permanent. If it's going to be used, it's going to be used. Does it matter for our purposes tonight?
It doesn't matter from a technical zoning point of view. It more is referring to a road that's not often used. It's only used for its specific purpose, kind of similar to we have other maintenance roads or roads that people use for fire safety. So they're not, or for vegetation management. So I think it's just, you should consider it similar to those types of roads that we have in town.
The road in the open
That
space.
was it.
So other questions from commissioners? Nicholas, did you have a question?
Yeah, I guess I've got two questions, and that is, have we ever treated a road by looking only at the tracks before? As I've been here for about 10 years on the planning commission, and I don't recall that, but I may have missed something.
We don't know for certain. We conferred with the staff that's been in town for a long time. So we presented this to ASCC, kind of looking for them to make a determination about whether they felt like this road should count or not, because it doesn't clearly fall into the guidance that we have on the website and within the code for how it's been interpreted in the past. Staff that's been here for a long time has indicated that there are certainly roads, as I mentioned, on properties that are used just for maintenance of larger properties or for equestrian facilities or for vegetation management. People sometimes have a road that's used only a couple times per year for that. Given the layout of this property, that's what we were kind of looking for ASCC's feedback and how we should consider it. ASCC didn't make a really specific recommendation to the Planning Commission about how it should be included, but the applicant made the suggestion of showing the tire tracks. ASCC found the road to be acceptable and appropriate and still rural in character and not really impervious. So they didn't make a specific recommendation to the Planning Commission, but they did think it was acceptable as it was proposed, and that the applicant's proposal to include the tire track seemed reasonable. So the Planning Commission, can give us a specific determination if you feel like, that's warranted. So with the tire tracks only as impervious surface, it certainly falls within the impervious surface limit for the property.
Right. I guess I was asking, have we ever made an interpretation that looks only like at the tire tracks before? And in my memory, we haven't. And I'm agnostic as to how we should treat it or not, but I'm just trying to get a baseline whether we've ever actually just looked at the tire tracks before.
To my knowledge, we have not.
If I can, through the chair.
Go ahead, Carter.
I don't think that, it's ever been counted, as impervious surface before. I was on the ASCC, when the open space district, use permit was reviewed. And the trails and the roads, being parking lot were never considered, impervious surface. But, as we all know, those trails and roads become mostly impervious during the year, because they're tracked down, by equestrians, and people, and ranger vehicles. So I really don't think it's ever been, counted like this. I suggested it, during the ASCC meeting, really as a mechanism, to deal with the impervious surface nature, that tire tracks, can be if they're used often enough.
Thank you, Carter.
So the issue goes to issues of compaction and of actual imperviousness is what you're trying to get to.
Well, that's why I suggested it, because I thought that, it was a rational response, because, the intent of impervious town, as a planning tool is to prevent, the compaction and runoff, that is associated with the compaction.
When you,
That was the only reason
if
I
I
did.
can ask during applicant's presentation, if you can discuss the construction of the road. It's like for example, you're using number 2 aggregate, or what the approach is to the road. Carter, you know that at my place, I've got 1,000-foot fire road cutting across my field. And Craig, you know it well. And you know that water doesn't, that there's no transmissivity there. And I think that the issue really goes to the construction of the road, more so than the than where the tracks might be. So that would be helpful from my perspective. Other members of the commission may have a different.
Yeah, so let's wait for the applicant presentation, but I think that'd be reasonable to delve into it.
And I think if I could add, from staff's perspective, the way that we understood how they were going to use the road, it also seemed reasonable to not include the road in the impervious surface. And there are numerous cases where we believe that's happened in the past, but ASCC didn't make any specific recommendation to that. So staff does think that's also a reasonable thing for the Planning Commission to conclude, depending on that discussion.
Other questions, Nicholas?
What I got.
Ann, you got anything? You're muted, but I'll take that as no. John?
No questions.
Jake, just because I feel like we maybe glossed over it a little bit, is the impervious surface calculation include the road, include the tire tracks, include the turnaround? I mean, what's in that? What is it, roughly 12,000 square feet, I think was the addition?
That's correct. The impervious surface calculation that you see within the staff report includes the tire tracks and turnaround area that was asked for by the ASCC to be shown on the plans. And it is within what's allowed for the site. If they were to include the entire 11-foot wide road and 13-foot turnaround area, it would exceed what's allowed for the site. So the tire tracks are kind of a compromise between the two, of not including the road and including the road entirely.
Okay, great. Thank you. So then moving on, are there any, is there a staff, or not, sorry, is there an applicant presentation beyond what the staff did? Carter, or?
Only to answer questions.
Okay.
The intent of the project, that we're trying to make very clear is about making, the Petches yard, more kid friendly, and horse friendly. And in both, there's, strong benefits to the general plan, the strong benefits, to the relationship the property has, to, the recreation and leisure activities, and also the educational opportunities, for the kids on site. The history of Portola Valley, having, equestrian pursuits is long and strong. There are few of us left. I'm one, that has horses in my yard. And I'm really pleased that the Petches want to have horses in the yard. And it really is, trying to make that a way that is sensitive, to the topography, sensitive to the neighborhood. The Petches have done an incredible job with their outreach, to the adjacent neighbors, and to the homeowners association, seeking their support and approval. I'm here to answer your questions regarding the construction of the road. Our intention, Nicholas, was, to not construct the road. It really was to, grade it smooth and, let the grass grow. If it is going to be, if we're going to count, if the Planning Commission wants to count, the tire tracks and the turnaround, as impervious surface, then I think it's only rational, to allow, the Petches to, prepare those tire tracks, with base rock, and make it an all-season road, because of the shape of it, and because, it's going from point A to point B, there isn't any reason to divert, from the interior width of the tires and the outside width of the tires more than, just a little bit, so that, the trailer, as it goes up and down the hill, stays on track. So, my request, from the planning commission is that if you do want, those areas, that are shaded, on our impervious surface plan to count as impervious surface, I think it's rational to allow, the improvement of those, into impervious surfaces.
Okay, questions for the applicant?
Oh, yeah, I didn't quite follow that, Carter. So right now the proposal is not serious improvement.
It's no improvement other than just making it smooth so that truck and trailer don't bounce and bounce, up and down. But, like I said, Ann, is that if the planning commission would like, to, count those those compacted areas as impervious surface, I think it's, it's reasonable and rational, to allow the Petches to improve those tire tracks and the turnaround at the barn, with, a base rock surface, so that it can become an all-season surface.
But the owners don't want, their first proposal is not to.
The first proposal is not to do that.
And make it, okay.
So to me, the issue, Ann, is that if the planning commission determines that those tire tracks and that turnaround should be, impervious surface and counted as such, then, when the plans come back, if that's the way it's approved, when the plans come back, then, the Petches should be allowed, to improve those tire tracks. And I think either way, it becomes a very rational way to do it. In deference, to, the fire truck, road across, the Targ's 1,000-foot field to get over to the water tanks. That really was improved as a fire truck road. This is really intended as a pickup and horse trailer road.
And does our opinion change, or to think about it, if the current owners are only planning to use the road a little bit, what about a future owner? Is there any chance a future owner would be just driving up and down all the time?
Well, even if they were, Ann, they would, the center part of a car never touches the ground. And you don't, except if you're, driving around, you don't need more than the tire tracks, to get up and down, a hill where you've got a point A to point B situation. There's going to be anybody, coming up at the same time that you need to drive off the road. They're not going to be street sweepers. There's, it's, even if there was an ADU down there, you would just drive up and down the hill.
Yeah.
But I think there's all kinds of conditions that, you could impose with this, but, it's, the whole concept is to be much more rural, most engineering standards. If we had a civil engineer, they would want it paved.
I see, yeah. Okay.
My clients and I don't want it paved. We want it to be natural.
And through the chair, it's such a small facility, right? It's not for a lot of horses. It's not for a lot of equipment or people. It's not habitable. So for all those reasons, that's why staff was thinking that it was perfectly reasonable as it was proposed originally.
I see, thank you.
Don, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Do not.
Judith?
Just a clarification of Carter's statement. If we were to approve as staff recommends, are you still saying that if we include the tracks as impervious surface, that you still want the ability to make the improvement? I'm a little unclear what you're saying relative to the current proposal.
Well,
What would it take for us to want? If you could clarify when you would want the right to improve it. I'm getting a little lost. I understood what staff
I'm
recommended.
sorry I rambled. So
No worries.
the nexus, Judith, is that if the planning commission determines that the tire tracks in the circle in front of the barn, should be counted as impervious surface, then the Petches should have the opportunity, if they want, to improve, to when they come back with their final, building permit plans, to actually improve those areas as qualified impervious surface elements. Does that make sense to you, Laura?
Laura, I'm sorry, but the staff's comment here does say that you think it's reasonable to include the tire tracks as impervious. So what I'm getting confused about is as you're recommending we interpret this, it sounds like Carter's additionally asking for the right to make an improvement if we included it all in the impervious surface. I'm sorry if I'm not following, but I'm just trying to catch up to what you're saying versus what the applicant is requesting.
Okay, I'll go back a step because I'm finding it a little bit confusing too. I want to make sure that we're all understanding it the same way. Okay, so I'm sorry if this is repeating, but it feels warranted. So the applicant originally did not include it as impervious surface. Staff felt that that was reasonable
Okay.
based on past practice, but
Okay.
we didn't have any formal determination in the books. So we asked for ASCC's feedback. ASCC found it also to be acceptable, but did not give a specific recommendation, but was a little bit conflicted because there wasn't a past practice. So then Carter made a suggestion to, should we show the tire tracks? And ASCC said, okay, that seems good. Then when Carter resubmitted to us, the tire tracks were shown and those numbers were included in the impervious surface. So we reflected that into the staff report. We think that's reasonable. All of these things are reasonable in staff's opinion. It's kind of a judgment call. And then I understand Carter's position in the meeting tonight to say, okay, that's reasonable. But if the planning commission wants to count it, then let the homeowners improve it one step further, because now it's counting for their impervious surface. Let them put down base rock and use it all year. So the planning commission can go all the way back to the beginning and say it doesn't count as impervious surface at all. Or you could say the tire tracks with the dirt is acceptable, or you could do what Carter is asking and let them improve it with base rock if it's going to count.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm just confused though. If they improved it with base rock, the impervious surface, the whole width and the whole turnaround, that would be too high, right? Then it wouldn't be allowed?
Just the tire tracks. They just improved the tire tracks and the turnaround.
I see. Yeah. Okay, that's the only, I see. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the question I have, so the primary reason this is before the planning commission is because of the cut and fill. So are there any issues relative in terms of drainage relative to the cut and fill that we should be aware of?
I don't know if Jake identified any issues from the review, but a site development permit went through its normal review by engineering and town geologist, and there were no issues that were raised in particular.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see anything, so, okay, great. Okay, any other questions for the applicant before I move to public comment?
Yeah, I'm still interested in the road, which I guess goes to issues of drainage. And that is, I mean, I can smooth out a road, Carter, as can you, with a roller, or I can just rough grade it What's the, and again, it just goes to the issue of porosity and transmissivity. How are we doing this?
It would be graded with with a dozer or a skip loader, just to take out the humps and lumps. I
So
mean,
we aren't rolling it or doing
No.
anything fancy.
nope. We'll probably drive up and down the hill a few times with the tractor. About the width of the tire tracks.
No 95% compaction.
No, none of that. Keep the engineers at bay.
Acquiring minds want to know.
Oh, exactly, and when soils engineers love that stuff. The natural ground is, only about 87% compacted.
And the gophers can still get through.
Yes.
All right, so other questions for the applicant? All right, so then I'd like to move on to public questions. It looks like I've got a couple of hands raised. Why don't we start with Rita Combs? Rita, welcome.
Hi, thank you. This family is a very active member group with the Portola Valley Pony Club currently, and I'm sure they'll be an active part for the future, and I'm very excited about their project. It's a wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Looks like Mary Hufty, you're up next. Welcome, Mary.
Hi. Well, I also, I'm speaking as from the point of view of the Westridge Committee, and we're in 100% support of this project. We've looked at it many times and from various different angles, and feel very comfortable with everything about it. I do, inquiring minds wish to know, however, and it's always, anything that happens in front of a screen of 9 like this is interesting. It seems to me that I put in a road to my barn with gravel, and it was considered impervious surface. And my driveway, I took out all the asphalt and put in gravel, and it was considered impervious surface. Has something changed? Do we not consider it impervious surface if we put gravel down instead of asphalt?
So Mary, I think the proposal, at least the original proposal, was not to put any gravel down, which was just to flatten the area.
In fact, I understand. It's just, if they did go to the trouble of doing a gravel road, would that solve this problem?
Well, then it would be impervious surface and they would be over their limit.
No, but for me, it was always it was considered pervious surface, the gravel road.
Let's not get into a discussion.
Okay, fine. It's just the way it is now.
I think gravel roads are impervious surface by the code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other public comments? All right, so seeing none, I'd like to bring this back to the commission for discussion. So who would like to lead off?
I'll
John,
start.
go ahead.
Nicholas, go for it.
Yeah, it's a nice project. We have,
So are you done? Is that it, John? Just go for it.
No, he beat me in terms of getting his hand up.
Oh, okay, fine. I was gonna say, so let me organize who's talking, because I thought you were saying go for the project. You were saying, Nicholas, go for it. All right. So Nicholas.
Oh, no. It's just that we both had our hands raised.
Yep. Okay, we're good. So Nicholas, go ahead, please.
yeah, I think it's a nice project. It's well thought out. We've benefited from the ASCC's thinking on the project. It has support from the town. It is, from the neighbors. It is in keeping with the traditions of the town and the rural nature of a community. My view is if we have a non-compacted, non-gravel, non-reinforced road, or this is a road, then it should be judged upon its porosity. And at some point, if I can suggest to staff that we should figure out how we're actually treating compacted or somewhat compacted roads and paths. But I think that it fits within, it doesn't fall within the definition of a impervious surface as it's proposed. If applicants want to put down tracks of gravel, they should, or if they want to preserve that opportunity, they should identify the tracks in the roundabout as being impervious to preserve the optionality. Otherwise, I don't see any need to include anything as impervious. That's good.
Thank you. Other commissioners? And Carter, you might mute. Some noise is coming through. I see you sort of lighting up every once in a while. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, so in terms of the, the cut and fill thing, I don't think there's any issue there from a planning commission perspective. And the ASCC certainly has taken a look at it from the aesthetic perspective. So I'm good with that. With respect to the only potential issues around the road impervious surface discussion. Quite frankly, I'd prefer not to start setting precedents around whether to include tire tracks or not, given that we've never really dealt with that before. I'd want to think about it a little bit more. I don't know what other issues might come up, but we certainly haven't done any kind of a thoughtful review of that. So I actually would prefer to go with staff's initial proposal, which is based on what they've seen before. This doesn't seem like it should count. We leave it there as unimproved in the plans. And that's what I'd be in mind to approve this evening.
Okay, thank you. Anne?
Yeah, I'm fine with the cut and fill over the 1,000 cubic yards. It's a net of like 225. That seems fine. No, I like it that the applicants are putting in a dirt road and not improving it. That feels more rural, so I'm good. I'm fine with not counting it because it's rarely used or low use. I'm also fine with the compromise of counting the tire tracks as the impervious surface. Either one is okay by me.
Yeah, one thing I might speak to as we go around is at the ASCC meeting, I was the liaison, and the reason the tire tracks came up was a concern that potentially a future resident might decide, oh, there's a road here, and now we can put gravel down. And kind of as we heard in the public comment, people think that if you put gravel down, it's still a pervious surface rather than impervious. So I think that's why the ASCC ended up where they did, which is setting it so that it counted, but allowed them to basically, have the road that they wanted. So I think that's what the, if you will, the needle that ASCC was trying to thread. So Judith, go ahead. I just want to inject that before we sort of finish up the discussion.
No, that's actually a helpful background, because I was kind of wondering why this is being presented as an aspect of the project. I mean, I agree with Nicholas and with the other commissioners as well, John and Anne. I like keeping it as rural as possible, as unimproved as the applicant is comfortable with. Obviously, they need to use it and make it useful. So if they think they can do so by keeping it pervious without improvements, I would definitely support that. And in terms of future applicants using it differently or more, or just putting down gravel, it's still going to count if they ever want to improve the property in other ways. people will go and find that there's gravel there and it's now pervious, and it'll be addressed in the future if and when that comes up. So I'm not as worried about that myself. And it's nice to see people adding projects like this. It seems simple. I think it's going to be light use based on the size of the barn and the applicant's plans. But even if somebody else moved in, I don't know how much you can increase the use to make it of concern. So I would keep it simple, and I'm comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you. So, I was at the ACC meeting. I definitely appreciated the discussion. I mean, certainly once you drive on something enough, you basically are compacting it. So it sort of does become impervious. But I also think that in the past, we haven't typically counted these. And I don't see that we should penalize the current applicant if we don't have a policy like this. It doesn't seem to me like the right time to make that policy. So I'm comfortable leaving it as basically uncounted and not counted as an impervious surface. I question whether the turnaround, which seems like that's something that might end up getting some additional gravel or something. I mean, I don't know what the applicant has in mind. I know if it were mine, I can imagine that particular area where I have to get out of my truck and do stuff seems like an area that I might want to compact. So, I can imagine maybe counting the turnaround, but in terms of the road, I'm okay. I'm with Judith. I think if somebody does come in and try to pave it or put gravel or whatever, if they try to do anything else, they're going to be way over their impervious surface, at which point they're going to have to fix it. So I would go with either a simple or that we include the turnaround, but no more. In general, I'd like to thank the applicant. I really appreciate getting comments from your neighbors in support of it. I think that's what I think of as the Portola Valley way. We work with our neighbors. So thank you for that. I mean, it's just so nice. It seems like we're in such a contentious age these days. And for you guys to clearly have spent the time you did talking to your neighbors to get, nice letters. And I'm assuming you didn't bribe them with lots of money. That's just, that was a great thing. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you taking that approach and working with your neighbors.
Thank you.
So with that, I would entertain a motion.
Through the chair.
Yeah, please, John.
So should we ask the applicant if they want to do the turnaround? Or I thought that was an interesting suggestion. If we're going to approve it, we should probably state it one way or the other, was my thought.
Okay, thank you. I think that's reasonable. So to the applicant, what do you think about this idea of counting the turnaround as impervious surface? And that will give you the future ability, if you decide it's just too muddy or whatever, to put gravel in there. You don't have to come back to us to do it.
Great idea.
But not count the whole road. Does that seem like a reasonable thing to, all around? Okay, so then I would entertain a motion with the turnaround as impervious surface.
I motion that we approve the application for 270 Mapashy Drive project with the modification that the turnaround be included in the impervious surface, but not the road.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Ann, or I think I saw Ann's hand first.
Ann can have it.
Yeah, we'll give it to Ann tonight. Okay, is there any further discussion before we vote on the motion? Judith, no. Ann? No. John? No. Nicholas? Okay. Laura, would you do the roll call, please?
Commissioner Haskell,
Aye.
Commissioner Targ,
Aye.
Commissioner Golden,
Aye.
Vice Chair Koff-Sill,
Aye.
Chair Taylor.
Aye. So congratulations. Good luck on your project, and thank you. Yeah, exactly. I know this seems like a pretty onerous process, and it's part of what we do to make sure we keep the town the way we love it. So I know it's hard to go through this process. So thank you for your patience in working your way through the process. But at the end, I think we do come out with good results, and I hope you're happy with the result you got tonight. So Good luck with your project.
We appreciate
Thank you all.
it very
Thanks.
much.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks very
you.
much, everyone. Really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Good night.
Thank you.
night.
Bye.
Okay, with that, let's move on to the second agenda item, which is the annual election of chair and vice chair. So normally, we, as commissioners in good standing, just sort of rotate through. We don't make this a sort of contentious political battle. And for this round, if we follow that, we would have Ann as the chair and Nicholas as the vice chair. One thing I wanted to bring up is one of the projects that we have coming up is the Stanford Housing Project, and both Ann and Nicholas will be conflicted out of that discussion. So one thing that was brought up was possibly having somebody else act as the vice chair for this year, and then have Nicholas basically take over the chair the year after. So I would ask Nicholas, first of all, since this would impact your role, if you're comfortable with something like that. And then we can kind of go ahead and make some decisions on who will be the chair and the vice chair. So Nicholas?
Yeah, I think that makes very good sense. And we will have chair and vice chair both needing to recuse, and that probably doesn't make sense.
Yeah, agreed. So, okay, so with that, I would accept a nomination for chair.
I would nominate Ann for chair.
An excellent nomination. Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Thank you.
Second.
Now, do we vote on these things independently, or can we just do it all as one, Laura? Do you have a sense?
I think we usually do it independently.
Okay, so, all right, so we have basically a motion for Ann as the chair, have a second. We do have an official roll call for this?
Yes, we should.
All right, please.
Commissioner Haskell,
Aye.
Commissioner Targ,
Aye.
Commissioner Goulden,
Aye.
Vice Chair Koff-Still,
Aye.
Chair Taylor.
Aye. Great, so congratulations, Ann. As soon as we're done this agenda item, I'm going to hand you the gavel through the screen. Okay, so then can I get a nomination for vice chair? And I would nominate John. So is anybody willing to second that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on that? All right, could you call the roll?
Commissioner Haskell,
Aye.
Commissioner Targ,
Aye.
Commissioner Goulden.
Aye.
This is getting tricky. Commissioner Taylor,
Ah,
Aye.
Chair Koff-Still.
wow.
I might be getting that
okay.
slightly wrong, but it's just for fun.
That's okay. I've been booted out. That was pretty, like, boom, it's over, dude.
I know, out of here.
Okay, yeah, I'm out. So, okay, well, great. So that's the end of agenda item number 2. And I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay,
So I'll let you be the chair through the rest of the meeting.
okay,
Congratulations.
great. I gotta hop back to the agenda then.
Right, now before you do that, I would like to say, for the few people that are on tonight, which is fairly small compared to our normal, I have really appreciated being chair this last year, and I've really appreciated the public input that we've gotten. I know that this Zoom stuff can be tough, but I just wanted to say to the public members who have hung in there with us all this time, thank you for joining us through these many meetings. And with that, Ann, I give it all to you.
And thank you, Craig, for being chair this past year. Appreciate it. Okay, our number 3 on our item is commission reports. It's an update on the Ad Hoc Housing Element Committee, which Nicholas and I serve on as members of the Planning Commission. Do you want to give an update, Nicholas, or I can add to it?
Why don't you go ahead?
Oh, okay. So we've had 2 meetings in January, and the first one was on fire safety, and we had a representative from Paradise. Laura, I'm not quite sure what her title was, but it felt like to me she was a kind of a staff planning member, but she talked about what Paradise has done to work on their housing element. And, for them, it's rebuilding the whole town, right? Everything burned. And it was just very interesting. And I felt very grateful that she was willing. She seems like she must be a hot ticket, willing to come and talk to Portola Valley. So that was good. And then there was a fire expert that really understands fire dynamics and looks at vegetation to talk about the work. He didn't have a final assessment of Portola Valley, but to talk about his process and what he's looking at. And then the fire marshal, Don Bullard, talked. So that was interesting. And then the second meeting that we just had on Monday, there's a committee of committees, all the committees in Portola Valley then feed in input on this housing element. And Judith Murphy chaired that and gave a report, and it's just really interesting, of course, to get the deep knowledge from each of the committees as input. And I think the ad hoc housing committee felt like, if we could condense that and coalesce it into kind of a checklist of sites that housing could be built on, what criteria do they have to meet? That was good. And then the staff gave an update or a description of the affiliated housing program in Portola Valley. So that's good. And then Laura gave an update on SB 9, the California law that now lets people split their lots and put ADUs on them, and an update on the town council ordinance, emergency ordinance that they passed in December for people, because that relates in some way to the housing element. That's it. Anything to add, Nicholas or Laura?
The only thing that I would add here is during the meeting with the fire marshal and the two experts was the extent of the resolution that will be forthcoming in establishing what in fact are the highest probability fire danger locations. And I believe that, and Laura, you're going to correct me on this. Actually, I'd like you to entirely restate it. But I believe that we'll rapidly be able to identify areas within town that would be where the threat of wildfire would be identified as a constraint on development in moving forward with areas with increased intensity. I don't believe that the proposal is to limit development in those areas at this point, but rather we're going to be focusing on areas of potential increased density or opportunities, and those areas would not be included in that. Am I remembering right, or am I characterizing that correct, Laura?
Yes, I think you are. If I could explain the way I'm thinking about it, it may be helpful. So we're thinking about the different constraints in the community and working on different constraints maps and different data for that that we'll be bringing forward to a future meeting. And so we're thinking about what are the constraints to having additional housing opportunities or increased density or affordable housing on different sites. And so we're bringing together the fire expert and geotechnical geology and kind of all the different data and trying to map that and see what sites have the most and the least constraints to identify sites for the site's inventory. Then as we proceed with elements of the safety element, we'll have even more detailed mapping. And then depending on the details of that mapping, it may be appropriate to limit different types of development, like exactly where ADUs or SB9 units may be placed or how they may be constructed, things like that. But we need to wait for that next round of mapping to come out so that we can think about that. Is that a helpful way to describe it? Or is that a good summary?
I think that is, just as to build on that, within the form of housing element that is given as a model by the California Department of Housing Community Development, HCD, there is a section addressing constraints, and that typically includes both physical constraints, limitations based on safety, infrastructure constraints, cost constraints, and other factors. So it sounds like those safety factors that we've been discussing will be fleshed out within the constraints section, and then will feed into that housing opportunity or the sections that identify increased opportunity or limitations for particular types of housing development.
Yes, I think that's right. When we're working on different parts of the housing element at first, we're trying to pull the pieces together to kind of create the critical path so that we can, work through the whole document and also work through the environmental review of the document. So it's kind of like when we think about the floor plans and the elevations together. You work on one side, then you see how it turns out, then you work on the other side, see it turns out. It's a little bit like that, like we're working different sides of it to bring the information forward to the committee.
And then further, one of the things I thought was interesting was in another portion of the HCD housing element program is a section addressing policy objectives and goals, and programs. And many of the, or much of the advice that we're receiving regarding fire safety, and risk mitigation will live in those sections as well, for sort of guiding future thinking.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So my general admonition is, if people are interested in the housing element, and everybody should be, the next handful of meetings are going to be very important. A lot of what we've been doing up to this point, from my perspective, and the house and planning director will correct me again, has been bringing everybody up to speed, and has been providing some of the tools to think about what goes into a housing element. But I believe that the rubber is going to hit the road in the next couple of months.
And that's exactly right. The next few meetings are going to be the most intensive kind of policy important meetings. So it's a very good time for people to get involved.
So,
Thank you all. And I see that Sarah has her hand up. Maybe we can call on Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I completely agree with everything that's been said so far. I just wanted to underscore one thing about the mapping, just because I was on I'm co-chair of the Housing Element Committee, as well as the representative on the Woodside Preparedness Committee. And as many know, there was a mapping presentation last night on that committee, and I just want to make sure that everybody that's following this, which I hope is as many people as possible, recognize that we're all working towards this kind of constraints map to be used in this process. And that map is taking into all of these items in consideration, as has been said on all of these meetings. And Laura, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but former CAL FIRE maps, inputs from Zeke, which will include inputs from Moritz. We also will have ingress, egress, road width, 30% slope, etc. So I kind of call it the super map. And as Laura said, it will be iterative. We'll have aspects available at different points in this process, but we're looking at a variety of inputs. And I think there was maybe not clear understanding of that by some in the Wildfire Preparedness Committee last night. And so I just wanted to, take the opportunity to clarify what the process is. Thanks.
And
Great,
for
thank you.
people that are new to this, Sarah was referencing Zeke. Zeke Lender is our our fire expert that does the mapping. He's a pyrogeographer. So he's the GIS modeling fire expert person. And she also made reference to the Moritz maps, which the Planning Commission may recall from previous conversations, if you've been on the conversation for a while. So those are existing town maps that the town has had.
Laura, and if I could just ask a question, is Zeke a consultant to the town? What's the relationship?
Yes, he's a sub-consultant to the town for both our housing element and our safety element.
Okay.
And John,
And
do I
can
see
you
your
read
hand?
out? Sorry, I was just going to quickly ask for the dates of those upcoming meetings that you're highlighting we should all attend. If you could just read them out, if you know.
Yeah. The next one is for sure going to be on February 22nd. So that's a Tuesday night since the Monday night is a holiday. All of these meetings are recorded and the Zoom recording is posted. So if you want to watch it later, we expect to schedule a special meeting of the Ad Hoc Housing Element Committee to follow within a week or two so that we can keep the momentum going around the sites. If anyone wants to receive notification of all these meetings, the easiest way to do that is to sign up for the e-notify for housing and housing news. And then you'll always get the email. But February 22nd is going to be an important one.
And John, did you have a comment?
I did. Well, more a question. So the map, again, back to the mapping. So one of the things I noted historically is that people kept referring to different maps, and some people were trying to say, well, this means this, or it doesn't mean that, or this applies in this situation. And it seemed to me that there was a fair amount of different maps for different purposes that various agencies may or may not take a look at. I believe even in SB 9, it kind of said at one point, the fire safety thing doesn't actually apply if you've already implemented against our California recommended fire code, that kind of stuff. This new map that we're doing, is there any, are we being able to put a map together that's a standard that like the state will approve, or will fit with the National Fire Association, their kind of designations? Do we have a standard in there yet, or are we sort of doing our own thing?
Great question. I wish there was a really simple answer, but right now, as far as we know, the newest CAL FIRE maps will not be released until late this calendar year. And that date has been changing all of the time for many years. So we don't know if they're really going to come out this year or not. So when the state releases their new CAL FIRE maps, they will have significance in terms of different state laws and what they mean. But we realize we can't wait for them. So we've been pursuing different ways to think about the mapping and try to find the best practices. So now that we've been working with Zeke Lender, we think that we've identified that what he's doing for modeling and mapping, we think is the cutting edge best practice. And so he is able, if you're interested, it's worth it to go back and watch his part of the presentation. It's really interesting. There's timestamps on the minutes if you want to just watch a section of it. It's about a 4.5 hour meeting, but you can pop around in Zoom and watch different parts. So we need to still get into contract with him to do that next very advanced stage of the mapping. And we're working with the fire district to figure out whether Woodside Protection Fire District is going to do it potentially for their whole area, if they're going to lead, or if the town is going to lead and just do the town. So we're thinking through those kinds of things right now. The fire district is also going to be working on their community sorry, I don't have it in front of me. It's like a community-based wildfire plan that they're working on this year also. So we're just trying to make sure no one's duplicating work and we're bringing all the best practices into the different parts of this. So we will be working, right now we have already basic constraint maps that we'll be sharing with the Ad Hoc Housing Element Committee on the 22nd. So we've got the existing very high fire severity zone. We'll show everyone the Moritz maps that we already have. We've remapped all of the slope using, you know, the latest technology, not our old funky maps. We have evacuation study work that's going on right now. So we've identified all the places in town that only have one point of access, and we know how many properties are served by each road that only has one point of access. And then we're also looking at the vegetation cover. Zeke is helping us with that and helped us to explain that vegetation has three, we look at it as 3 levels, because if the lower underbrush is not well cared for and well maintained, then you're going to have a higher fire danger. So we're really using the best technology and putting together our own things. Now, exactly what form it's going to take, we're working out right now. But I think we're moving in the direction of having our own map that will be the state of the art, best available mapping.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Laura, I see some public hands up. Do we take those now or wait till we finish your staff report on the safety element and then take public comments?
I would recommend that you take them now.
Okay, great. Can we call on Rita Comas?
Hi, thank you for taking my comment. You know, we're talking so much about the housing element, and there was the committee of committees, but I feel strongly, and sounds like other people in the community feel strongly also, that the safety element be put in place first. And we're talking about wildfire, but I don't hear much talk about possibility of earthquakes, and we have a lot of faults in this town. And for the committee of committees and for the housing element, I do not see or have not seen the Geosafety Committee being part of anything, the Open Space Committee being part of it, the Underground Committee, you know, because I feel strongly that we've got to do something with the utilities in this town. Half the town didn't have power last night, and from December 23rd, half the town didn't have phones and, you know, and Wi-Fi. So we need to address these things, because in any kind of emergency or planning in this community, we've got to put those things in place, and there's not enough talk about them out loud. So I'd like to see the geosafety. We have these committees, we have these great, wonderful, intelligent people that have volunteered their time, and I'd like to hear their voices in these conversations to keep us safe, and not just consultants, but the residents of this town that have a lot to say. Thank you.
Through the chair, can I just speak to that briefly?
Yes, please.
All of the town's committees were invited to participate, as I mentioned at the Monday meeting. And so I would say, Rita, if you want those committees to participate, reach out to them and encourage them to do so. Because staff has asked them if they wish to, but you know, they're volunteers. And so if they don't want to participate, you know, that's up to them. So I think, you know, that's kind of how staff views it.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Rita. Next, Mary Hefty.
The Geological Safety Committee was not aware of being invited. So, I mean, I'm glad to hear that they were invited, but they have to know about it. That's one thing. And I do think that you know, they haven't met in a long time. And I think they've sort of waiting for some support on their meeting, you know, to be sort of included in the program, so to speak. But they are a very qualified, committee. I think you guys are doing a great job looking at this, and it's going to be difficult. I think it's coming together little by little. So keep it up.
Good, thanks, Mary. Let's see, phone number that ends 7562.
going to be Caroline.
Go ahead, 7562. Are you there?
You're unmuted now.
Go ahead. Is that Caroline? Yeah, we can't hear you. The person that's showing up as 7562. We'll have to go on. You look unmuted from our end. Okay, I think we'll go on to the next item. So Laura, next is staff reports and update on the safety element, which we've just been talking about.
I just wanted to make sure that the planning commission has the latest information specifically on the safety element. There's important interplay between the housing element and the safety element. And we do have, as you know, the same consultant team. There's overlap on these two initiatives to make sure that the elements of the safety element that are important to the housing element are getting done, and that information is getting sent over to the Housing Element Committee. So on February 23rd, the town council is expected to talk about the safety element again and get into a little bit more detail about the remainder of the process. So we've been doing initial work, data gathering, analysis, early mapping, those types of steps. The structure and the content of the safety element are going to be guided very strongly by the guidance materials that are put out by the State Office of Planning and Research. So the Governor's Office of Planning and Research, called OPR. OPR also has a fire hazard planning technical advisory that we will be using, and we'll comply with that as well. So that is all planned to be done. Also wanted to point out that CAL FIRE and Woodside Fire Protection District have a formal role in the safety element process. So as outlined in those requirements, they're required to review and participate. We are working with them indirectly, as always, with Woodside Fire Protection District on the housing element, but just wanted to make sure you know they have a formal role in the safety element process. The town committees also have a role in reviewing materials for the safety element. So what we're going to be doing is taking some of that early analysis and materials, and we'll feed that into the draft document, and we'll be going before the Wildfire Preparedness Committee, the Emergency Preparedness Committee, and the Geologic Safety Committee. In this case, we would ask the Geologic Safety Committee to convene a meeting to review this, just since there's a little discussion about this right now with the last item and the question about their participation. And then there'll also be a community-wide meeting. The schedule for that isn't set yet. We'll also be setting up a separate e-notification for the safety element update. The safety element update has a lot of structure that comes from the state in terms of how we follow it, and a lot of technical work. So that's the kind of basis of how we're thinking about it. And then, of course, there'll be full draft materials that will go through a planning commission process in your role as the body that reviews these policy documents, and then, of course, to the town council. The schedule is legally has to be completed by the end of the year in sync with our housing element. And so we're working on both pieces of work concurrently and thinking about the timing of each of them to make sure that we're getting the important pieces from the safety element process into the housing element process. So that's just the overview. So people that are interested can tune in on February 23rd. And as always, you can always watch the Zoom back if you're not able to attend the meeting in person. And then as we go, I'll continue to just give brief updates to the commission on the safety element, so you know how that's going. It won't be coming before the planning commission probably for a while, unless the council gives us different direction when we meet with them on the 23rd. So happy to try to answer any questions or get any thoughts from you if you have anything you'd like me to carry forward or think about as we present to town council.
Great, thanks, Laura. And I see that Sarah has her hand up.
That's an error, sorry.
Oh, no problem. Okay, good. Any other comments from the panelists? I see we have a public comment, so I'll move to that. Go ahead, Rusty, Dave.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to make sure that the commission is aware that on January 25th, the Woodside Fire Protection District Board unanimously approved a recommendation from its fire marshal, Don Bullard, to immediately update the wildfire hazard severity maps throughout the district and to conduct a comprehensive wildfire hazard and risk assessment with a target deadline to comply with the state requirement by July 1st. But the district made it very clear that they want to exceed that deadline, and they want to get this implemented as quickly as possible. In that regard, the board chairman, Mr. Miller, wrote and stated that the board of directors of the Woodside Fire Protection District takes hazard mapping very seriously and has been formulating a plan to meet the new state directives and update the very high fire hazard severity zones district-wide. Based on staff recommendations, we expect to move ahead immediately with a new project to identify these zones based on the current standards, utilizing a consultant such as Ray Moritz, and will be seeking final board approval in the upcoming meeting. It's important to identify all the zones that fit the latest criteria and do so quickly. There's no interest in improving the limited CAL FIRE map from 2008, as it is too old and also too limited based on our assessment. You may recall the district rejected this map as too limited even back in 2008. It is not a safe and accurate map to approve in 2022 either. We are also planning to adopt the new minimum fire safe guidelines for these new zones. The state has mandated a July deadline for compliance, and we are expecting to complete this process and designate new very high fire hazard severity zones across the district in advance of this deadline. And I think that in as much as the town, as we understand, greatly relies upon and defers to the guidance and the professional judgment of the district, it's extremely important that this process of the district be woven into the safety element. There's no reason for the town to be competing with the district or its professional guidance or judgment on hazard assessment and risk assessment and hazard designations. So I hope the town is going to support this effort of the district, and I look forward to that.
Thanks, Rusty. I see Caroline Vertongen's hand up. Caroline, go ahead.
Yes, I will try again. Thank you so much. Thank you for the residents who have been speaking up. Unfortunately, there was a technical problem again. And so I might have missed half of the speeches, but there seems to be a disconnect of what you receive from staff and what we as residents actually have heard at the meetings, and we attend many of the meetings. So once again, I would like to reiterate the committee of committees. Not everybody was there. And actually that meeting was only published or put on the website the day before. Many of the committees have not even discussed it. So for a resident who has been involved with the housing since 2000 and 2001, and then we had the 2013, we have a general plan with a housing element that was adopted in 2015. And so everything is very clear. And I hope that this committee will watch the presentation that we all saw yesterday. Ray Moritz really confirmed everything that we have been saying for the last, 5 years? And unfortunately, all these projects have been approved without taking care or considering these maps, fire safety maps and earthquake maps. And it was all there. So we're very disappointed. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments. Okay, I think we'll go on. Next is approval of minutes from our last meeting. I think it was December 15th.
If I can ask, yesterday's meeting is presently posted. Planning Director?
I'm sorry, I don't know. I don't staff that committee, so I just don't know off the top of my head.
Would you be so kind as to ask that it be posted and notice be sent to the members of the Planning Commission?
Yeah, for the Wildfire Preparedness Committee, you want to receive notice of it?
Yeah, sounds like an important meeting, and we ought to be on top of where we are.
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
Right, on to the minutes discussion. Do people have changes to make?
Got a couple. Want me to run through them?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. These are largely in the spirit of typos or something like that. Read page 91, last paragraph, second line. It says trips per hour vehicle. It doesn't sound right. If you can check the terminology, something's wrong there, I think. Then on red page 92, last full paragraph, third line down, 2-car queue, Q is spelled wrong. Red page 95, second to last paragraph, item has been fairly length. I think there's a Y missing. Red page 96, first paragraph. He asked if borders are included. I think borders is the BOARDERS version. And then there's just a general set of comments from the public where only the person's first name is cited. And, you know, it starts on red page 96 with Jose. It continues on red page 97 to Cindy and Karen. If you can't figure out who they are, I suppose you should just follow your general procedure. But I thought our policy was to get first and last name and address, and none of that's being recorded here. And as we get into this year, we should probably try and be more disciplined about where people are residing in town, because I think some of the topics we're going to be dealing with, that would be an important factor to understand. Last one, red page 100, top paragraph. There's just a sentence that's been split into two. If complaints come in, comma, then the commission. There's a period and a capital then. Probably just needs to be one sentence. So that's it.
Great, thanks, Judith. Any more comments from commissioners?
I have one. Excuse me, red page 101, third paragraph, says Chair Taylor announced that he longer recommends. So I think it's either you get rid of the longer, and he recommends that there's a maximum enrollment. Or it could have been, I mean, that kind of went around. It could have been that he no longer, but whatever it is, that the sentence that's there now doesn't make any sense. And since we went on to then recommend that there be a maximum enrollment cap. So I think if we just delete the longer, it would be fine.
Great. Anything from you, Nicholas?
I have nothing.
How about you, John?
Nothing.
Okay. Any comments from the public? I don't see any hands raised right now. Oh, there's one. Go ahead, Caroline.
Thank you. Perhaps this is for Laura, Building Director. I'm still not clear because even this week we had conflicting answers. The lady who lives on Woodside, at Woodside Priory, she was in the understanding that no more buildings will be built. But then you have consistently said that there's 6 buildings being built. Could you please confirm that? And then for this committee, I would like to know, is there a list of conditions that you have attached to this amendment, or, and will we see that, or how is the process? What is the process? So thank you.
Through the, chair, you want me to speak to the question
thanks,
about the number
Laura.
of units?
Yes, thanks, Laura.
The Priory has a master plan that allows them to build a certain number of units. They just completed 6 of those units that are approved in the master plan. They have approval for additional units to be constructed in the future with only ASCC approval. But the Priory has told us that at this time, they're not going to proceed with those in the immediate future. So if you've heard 2 different things, they do have approval for it, but they may not go forward with it. It was just kind of a master plan depending on their needs in the future. In terms of the process, the Planning Commission reviewed the draft conditions of approval at the meeting and provided feedback on them. And then my staff is finishing them. And then the commission appointed Commissioner Haskell to review those final version and make sure that it aligned with the Planning Commission's motion and decision. And then they'll be signed and published. So then they'll be available to the public once those steps are completed.
Great, thanks, Laura. Good, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'm sorry, through the chair, we have another hand up from Christy Corley.
Oh, I didn't see that. Yep, thank you. Go ahead, Christy.
I was just wondering about the Priory. You were having a pilot program for the carpool and you were bringing people up Goleta. I don't know, that other lane that really wasn't going to be a drop-off area, but now is. Can you comment how that pilot program's going and what you're finding?
No, I can't. I think the Priory needs to give us their update on that. When we last spoke, they had implemented that rather recently.
So
Sure.
when would we find out then? Is there a time?
Chair, if I may, that
Thanks.
we address continued issues pertaining to the Priory following the review by Commissioner Haskell that will give the planning director an opportunity to more fully prepare, I believe, and be most responsive, and as she sees fit, invite the Priory to participate as a friendly suggestion.
And
Sure.
do we have the timing on that?
I'm sorry, I don't know the timing. I believe that it's pretty fully drafted, but I think we just haven't sent it to Commissioner
Yeah.
Haskell.
Thank you. Great. Do we have a motion to approve these minutes?
I so move.
Motion. Second?
Great. Can we just do this with a general aye and nay, or we have to roll call it?
We need to roll call for Planning Commission. Commissioner Haskell,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Targ,
Aye.
Vice Chair Goulden,
Aye.
Chair Koff-Sill.
Aye. And I think that's all our issues.
Well, I think Craig should be taking the lead
I
on
make
the
a motion to adjourn.
Second. Second.
Well, if I may, it may be appropriate to recognize his service over this past year, having taken us through a number of challenging issues. Chair Kopsdale, that may be most appropriate by you, if I may.
Yes, no, I agree. Thank you, Craig. We really appreciate it. Good job. Some difficult meetings and long meetings. Thank you.
And on behalf of the staff, I really want to say thank you. There was a lot of discussion and coordination that had to happen between the chair and myself this year. And I think it really helped to have the public participation be heightened, to help the residents understand the process. It can be so complicated. And I think that Craig really did a good job in making this complicated process accessible to people. So from my point of view, I really appreciate that. So thank you very much for that.
Great. Well, thank you all for the kind words. And Anne, I'm here for you if you need any help.
So I'll need help from all four of you, I'm very sure, and Laura, and everyone, I'm sure. Thanks. So
I think we have a motion and a second, maybe?
yes,
Second.
all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Good night, everybody.
Thanks,
night.
everyone.
See you soon.
Right.